Y'all know what it is.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to Eggs. Today's special guest is Josh Little. Josh is the founder of 4 companies, Maestro, Bloomfire, Qzzr, and most recently Volley, that have collectively been used by hundreds of millions of people and featured by organizations like TechCrunch, Mashable, Entrepreneur, and Forbes. With 2 successful exits and a 3rd on the way, he's currently on a mission to help remote team communication suck less with his 4th creation, Volley, a video messaging app. Depending on what circle you run in, you may know Josh better for his pickles, performances, or projects, as he's a 5th-generation pickler, a classically trained singer, and a mechanically minded YouTuber. Joining us today for a conversation about bringing the future of work into the present, how to 2x your team's productivity, and how we can reduce the number of meetings in an organization by up to 50%, allowing us to meet less and communicate more. Please join us in welcoming to the show, Josh Little. Hey, Josh, how are you, man?
So good. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. Absolutely. Thrilled to death to have you. We were talking a little bit before the show. It's kind of funny that, technology has allowed us to have these long distance podcasts, yet we're more or less in the same area and could have been doing this in person. So it's funny. Technology has allowed us to be maybe further apart than ever.
Right. Yeah. It's amazing. And since we are in the same geography, I have to ask, is the title of the show, is it Eggs? Or as they say in Northern Utah, eggs.
We're probably more akin to Northern Utah. We're from both Mike and I are from. Well, I'm from Idaho originally. Mike's lived in Idaho most of his life, so we're eggs people.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
Yeah.
My wife and I have that debate. I'm from Michigan. She's from Utah. So is it eggs or eggs?
Yeah. No. Well, I guess potato, I suppose.
Yeah. Right.
So, but no, we're eggs people. So, but anyway, so cool. So Josh, let's just talk a little bit about sort of, let's establish, who you are, what you do.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm an entrepreneur, as the intro stated. And in the fast pace of tech startups, the intro is a interesting mile marker to how fast startups move, because we booked this podcast a few months ago, and at the time that was the story of Volley, like teams and productivity. Since we've been taken over by a whole new crop of users who are YouTubers, creators, coaches using Volley for community and masterminds and group coaching, and they are just running with the app. So they're outpacing anything teams can do. So that's all to say, kind of the wild world I'm in. I started a career as a teacher. I taught in public school for a year, realized that wasn't it. And then tried to figure out what on earth someone with this skill set could do for the world. So it turns out sales. If you can motivate 11th graders not to burn down a school, you can motivate someone to buy a thing. And so I was fairly good at sales and went to 3 Fortune 500 companies in sales and sales training roles. And then just had that itch that just couldn't be scratched without starting my own company, and eventually left to start my first company, Maestro, which, became a very profitable service company, e-learning company. And from the profits of that, we built a software company called Bloomfire, sold that in 2011, thought I was done, took a year off, got bored, got back on the saddle, built a company called Qzzr, took that to 200 million users, and like crazy, every publisher in the world was using Qzzr for a little while, and got voted off the island. That's a book and a story in itself. Depression, took 4 years off, spent 2 years trying to find the right opportunity to kind of get back up to the plate and crank one over the fence. So I looked at about a dozen different opportunities for weeks or months at a time, tried validating things until the idea for Volley came, and it was just too good. Like, the world needs a better way to communicate that's flexible and face-to-face, the richness of talking, the flexibility of texting. And pandemic hits. Okay, let's go. Let's build it. So that's where we were 20 months ago. And yeah, brings us to today.
That's crazy.
That's awesome.
That's an interesting switch from being a teacher and then getting into tech. Can you maybe talk about?
I think Mike froze for a second, but I wonder, I think he was going to maybe try and lead into what I was going to ask too, which is, you've got this experience as a teacher. which basically means you know how to explain things. As you mentioned, you worked in e-learning. I saw that you worked for a couple of other companies in roles where you were teaching.
Yep.
And then, here you start, deciding to create tech companies, things like that. But obviously, I mean, as a teacher, I guess you're set up for learning, but like, how do you step into that realm? I mean, is your role in a tech company still just kind of sales, or are you now a technical mastermind that's building apps and products?
Not a technical mastermind, because maybe one of my engineers are listening, so I can't front. And I did, after I sold Bloomfire, I did try to learn to code for like 2 months, and then realized, I could probably get on top of this mountain, but the peak moves every day, and you have to just keep hiking your whole career. And I don't want to do that. I'm good at all of the rest of the things that tech company needs, which is like marketing and sales and casting a vision and recruiting a team and raising money and all of those other things that a startup needs. And I can just partner with people that know how to build the product and design the product. So it is a long stretch. And crazy story, like when I started at Stryker, I was selling computer assisted brain surgery platform, like $1 million GPS for the body, 3D charts and like sub-millimeter accuracy instruments that we were using. And I had to ask one of my managers there, like, how do you burn a CD? Do you just like drag a file to that little CD thing? So I am not a technical mastermind. I'll leave that to the technicians. But investors say that there are a few that can kind of cast an infectious vision and recruit a killer team as well as I can. So we'll go with that.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I think I froze initially in my initial question. What I was getting at is, what were some of the challenges that you really had to overcome with that first app and the learning curve with going from sales and teaching to being someone that's starting a product?
Well, luckily I kind of had a transition. And, when I speak at universities, I'll tell students this, like, if you have an idea for a product company, start a service company instead. Like, find that industry, that niche, go in there and then build a service somewhere around the vicinity of the product that you want to create. Get some revenue, find some customers, learn more about the space. Unless you're just a total expert, which almost no 20-year-old is, start a service company first. It really worked well for me. And that's kind of what led me to Bloomfire. So with Maestro, we basically created e-learning courses, content for medical device and pharma companies. That was the first couple of years because I came from medical and pharma, and so did my co-founder, Jen. So it was an easy call point. We got to work with the who's who of medical and pharma companies and create content for them. So it was just like, hand us your binders and your CDs and we'll make e-learning and hand it back to you. And that's the dream. That's what I wish, that's the company I wish existed when I was a training manager at Stryker, trying to like scale what we were doing. And e-learning was just, it was like hiring 5 vendors and working with the 3D animator and the videographers. And I was like, what the crap? I don't have time for this. I've got a training program to run. So that was kind of the beginning experience of like, what does a designer do? What does an engineer do? How do they work together on a team? How do we create a work product that works, that our customers are willing to pay us tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars for? So it was a safe space for me to not only gain traction in a market, but also to have revenue. It was a very profitable company to be able to hire those people and to learn and to build a little network of talented people. Then when the idea for Bloomfire came, if Maestro is solving for the 10% of what you learn to do your job that actually comes from quotes training, the other 90% that come from like a text message or that video this person created or this conversation we had around the water cooler, totally unstructured, totally social. How do we pull that together? And that was the idea of Bloomfire. What if we could like collect your organization's brain and make it easy for anyone to share information across any organization, like closed social for your company? And because I had revenue, because I had, capital to start the company, because I knew engineers and designers already, I had already kind of addressed the learning curve that a lot of people have have to overcome when they first start a product company. And so there is a big wall that you have to go up from going from working at a company to like creating one, especially if you're not an engineer and don't know how to code. That's a whole new world, like building software. How does that work? How do we ship things? What's the cadence? How do we even work together as a team? I was able to learn all of those things in a service company, which, kind of helped pay dividends over the years in building product companies.
I like that. Thank you for that.
So were you already really entrepreneurial, or how did you determine that you were even capable of starting a business, given that you'd started a career as a teacher?
No, I was and wasn't. So there was the entrepreneur word. That wasn't a word I used until I was in my late 20s. Nobody from my hometown was an entrepreneur or expressed that idea about themselves. There were a lot of people, like my mom, for example. She was technically an entrepreneur. She did odd jobs. She painted houses, wallpapered, she cleaned houses. So she ran her own business, not a massive business. It was just her and her boys that would go help her. But she was an entrepreneur, but we just didn't think about it in that way. I had a lawn mowing business starting when I was between 11 and 16. So was an entrepreneur. We didn't know that. So the only options I saw growing up in Jackson, Michigan, were you either work at the power company like my dad did, you work at the prison like other people's dads did, or you become a teacher, or work at restaurants where I worked at Red Lobster. Like that wasn't interesting long-term for me. So, okay, I picked teacher. So that was my path. And I'm a classically trained singer. So I'm a singer. So I went to school. I'll be a music teacher. Okay, let's do that. That's kind of what the path that took me into college, that got me the education degree, albeit took 6 years to get there, working full time, getting married in the midst of that, having a child in the midst of that. But, all to find out during student teaching, nah, this isn't for me. This is not my thing. And $27,000 a year, I just didn't see having a family. Like, I'm not going to be able to do what I want to do on $27,000 a year. So we got to find something else, which kind of took me forward. So it was really reading the book. I know, as dumb as it may sound, reading the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Yep.
Was a revelation to me. It was like, what? You can just be wealthy if you want to. You can start your own business. I know that sounds stupid. This is in my mid to late 20s. And it was like, okay, I've got to do this. I was like 27 when I read the book. I didn't start my first company until I was 33. So it took over 5 years for me to think about it, to talk about it, get up the courage. And I became that friend. Like if we had couples over, we went on dates, or I'd get together with my friends, I'd hijack every conversation. Whatever we were doing, whatever, we're going to talk about what business could we start together and what products could we build. And I've got notebooks full of ideas during that phase of my life. And I'd be traveling for Stryker, but I'd be scribbling down ideas, drawing logos. I'd be designing, different products. What about water flavoring? Oh, we should do like a bunk bed thing, or like, just like iterating in my own mind, like trying entrepreneurship on until I finally just got like a hell yeah of an idea, just Maestro, like creating the company that I wish existed from the place that I was as a practitioner, trying to build a global sales training program. Finally, that was like, that's too good to say no to. I just have to do it. And I tried to do it on the side. And this is why I believe there's no such thing as a side, and side hustles are, a joke, but I couldn't do it. Like one or two, I just couldn't get any traction. It was really quitting my corporate job cold turkey, leaving Stryker in the first week, downloading some free software, building some spine anatomy training courses, flying to a couple implant manufacturers that I knew in Texas, and doing 2 deals, one for $30K, one for $90K, and realizing, holy crap, I'm in business. I got to hire people to make these things. I don't even know how much to charge. I don't even know how to make these. So yeah, that reluctant entrepreneur, but that kind of leads to how we actually got it started. Probably a run-on answer, but
your conversations with your friends sounds like every day with Ryan and I.
Yeah. Well, let's hang out, because I still love those conversations. I got a I've got a spreadsheet of hundreds of ideas, and I want to bounce them off you. I had a good one last week too. I kind of want to talk about.
Yeah, well, we ought to do it. Yeah, no, one of the things that I keep noticing, and, and I think it's interesting that you cited like Rich Dad, Poor Dad specifically, but I mean, obviously, I mean, Mike is a big advocate for those books. I've read it, but I don't recall it very well. I need to go back and probably give it another go. I'm in a mode where I'm spending a lot of time on this stuff. But there's a component of learning or education, and maybe with your background in education, but also your practical experience of building companies, maybe you can help me understand or drill into a little bit. And there's this disconnect, I think, between, for a lot of people who do the reading, they buy the book du jour, they read the thing, but then they, go that 5 more years before they actually take a step, or maybe never take a step. So, I mean, is there anything that you can talk about, or do you have any thoughts around this idea of actually putting what you read into action? So, because I mean, if we live in a world where you can learn anything about anything, right? I mean, there's YouTube channels, there's books, there's anything you want. You can learn any skill, anything you want to do, but still so many people don't. And so I wonder if you wouldn't mind talking about just your perspective on that, if you think there's anything in there.
There is a quote, and if I were good at memorizing quotes, I would spit it out right now. And somebody's probably listening to this saying, Josh, you should say this quote by this person. And, I'm thinking but it's something like, read fewer books, do more from the books, or do 10% of the books that you read, or something like that, every time I hear that quote, I'm like, yes, that's what I try to do. And I am amazed when, so certain books like you, Ryan, like Rich Dad Poor Dad may not have clicked for you just based on, like, if in Utah, it's a total different place than Michigan. It really is. And that's why I live here now. That's why I moved here 10 years ago. I was like, holy crap, it's happening there. And I couldn't find anyone to sell SaaS or market a SaaS product in Michigan. You can find medical device people, you can find automotive supplier people, but not like software as a service people. Here, they're like on every corner, somebody who knows how to sell a SaaS product and, generate leads and what? Okay, well, I guess let's go. So I think depending on what water you've been drinking, some books, some knowledge may or may not be that impactful. But for me at that time, that book was. And I absolutely do it. Like I'm like I read every book I read, I come away with like new to-dos and new things I'm going to put into place. And it kind of wears my wife out. And I know people who they read a lot of books, but they change almost nothing. And it's like, oh yeah, I read Atomic Habits. And
what did you do?
It was a good book. What? You're not doing push-ups now? What? You're not? Oh, like I'm on 14 push-ups a day right now, and it's really sticking for me. And I really think, I really try to apply these learnings, and I appreciate how much effort goes into writing a book. And I know there's a lot of books that are written that really don't need to be written, but for someone who's thoughtful, I think, if they've taken the time to pull it together in a book, there's probably something there for me. So I just finished Can't Hurt Me, David Goggins last night. And right before that was, I'm also reading, I started Born to Run last night. And then right before that was Shut Up and Run, Robin Arzon. And yeah, I'm running right now. You can bet it. I'm not signing up for an ultra marathon at 6'3", 240 pounds, but
I was going to say, be careful trying to keep up with David Goggins. That's true.
I know, but I'm running, and I haven't run since 9th grade gym class, and I kind of like it. And I'm kind of trying to figure out, can I push myself beyond that boundary where I feel like I'm about to explode when I have to stop and walk? And what would happen? Do I pass out? Is that okay? Can I push those? I've got David in my ear. So I really do try to apply the things that I learn in a sincere way, like the most impactful things. So yeah. I don't know if I've actually ever noticed that about myself until you said it right now today. So
do you think then, in your experience, is that application maybe it's something that you're just, maybe you're naturally inclined to it, or do you think that there's something missing? Is it accountability? Like what is it that keeps people from applying the knowledge they pick up?
Oh man. This is where the introvert.
This is $1 million question. If you solve this,
like the introvert in me wants to just stop time and think about that, and get a whiteboard out and get some note cards and like that, because that's a juicy question.
Yeah. Well, and like I say, I mean, there may not be an answer, right? This is just something I think about a lot because I do read a lot of these business books. I mean, you just mentioned a bunch I've listened
Yeah.
to or that I've read. I've gone going back now and revisiting some old like Tony Robbins books and things like that. And just I'm finding that me personally, I'm kind of like that guy you described, right? I do the reading, but then I don't apply. And what I'm trying to understand, not only for self-improvement, but also in helping my kids or helping people I meet, people like that who want to better their lives or improve their situation. They have access to the information because we all do.
Yeah.
Yet there's still so many people who, can't, more or less get a pot together to piss in. Yeah.
I mean, so let's go there. Let's do a little coaching. So I'm not a coach, but why do you think you don't apply? Why do you think, is it that you feel the information is not valuable or not applicable or not actionable, or is there fear? Yeah. I don't know.
In my mind or in my own little armchair psychology, I think it's probably fear-based. And I think it's sort of a little bit, whatever it is, that's the thing that keeps you from doing the first step that's scary. So let's say you're out with your friends at the lake and they're going to go jet skiing and it's your first time ever on a jet ski. Okay, well, there's this thing that you must walk through, right? This invisible veil that keeps you, especially maybe you don't swim well, maybe whatever, and you're nervous for whatever reason, you're worried. And so I think whatever that is, emotionally or psychologically, I think that's the same thing. So I know for me, like, there's a lot of little startups I've tried starting and, I always do them as a little side thing, like what you're talking about. So maybe that's why they never go anywhere. But, I haven't been afraid of taking that first step, but there's something going on where I can only take it so far. And then it's either abandoned or it just doesn't go. It just, we stop talking about it. I lose interest or whatever. And so, but I think what that really is I think there's a fear step in there somewhere, right? Yeah. I think there's something going on that's keeping you from going there. And for the longest time, I thought it was a knowledge thing, right? Like maybe we haven't uncovered what it is we need to do. What is the next step? In a lot of cases, it's that. So I've always toyed with, well, do I go back to business school or do I do, X, Y, Z, whatever it is. Yeah. And, but what I've landed on is that I think it's basically something that I've got, and I think a lot of people have, that's sort of this emotional barrier that we need to break through. And part of it is because we don't have clarity for what's on the other side. Does that make sense?
I think it's thoughtful. Yeah. And there's a couple things I want to talk about there. The whole side hustle thing and maybe distraction and focus. And then I think you are hitting on the thing, because that's what I wonder is if it's fear. I had an experience that was really meaningful to me. In fact, it's like written to our family's trust. It's on our wall at home. Be brave enough to try. And it's a stupid experience. Like I bought a 1986 Toyota 4Runner Turbo. I had a blown head gasket. I did that when I was 19. I didn't have much money. I knew a friend who'd owned a 4Runner and he kind of worked on cars. And I grew up in my dad. He likes comfort, and he if he's listening, it's hard, and he knows, and we've had this conversation. He makes a lot of decisions based on fear and trying new things is not something. It's like, do the same old things, go to the same place, go on vacation in the same place. And there's a lot of great part to that, right? Like the tradition, the rituals, like knowing that the Hillsdale Fair is going to have these fries and we're going to enjoy those or whatever. But that's kind of the place I came from. And to kind of set the context for 4Runner, my friend Jeremy Goss, he worked on cars. I was like, oh, do you know how to do a head gasket in a 4Runner? And he's like, oh yeah, just bring it over on Saturday. And so I got the parts and brought it over, and, under his little carport, he started digging in. Now I'd worked on cars a little bit, basic stuff, brakes and changing oil, but not a head gasket. That's like heart surgery for a car. So he starts taking stuff off and just like throwing parts. And then I see him put something back on, and I'm like, wait, do you know have you ever done a head gasket before? He's like, no. I'm like, wait, what? We shouldn't be doing this. No. He's like, what do you mean? It's just nuts and bolts. People do these every day. We can figure it out.
I love that mindset.
We can figure it out. It's just nuts and bolts. Other people can do it. We can too. What? These are new ideas. How am I getting this from a mechanic? This is interesting, right? And so that experience was some sort of turning point for me, and like just being brave enough to try and to do hard things and to push through. And I think that, coupled with my, performance and background singing, and you kind of have to put yourself out there, and singing is a very personal thing to do, especially singing a solo, because that instrument is right there in your body. It's very much you and your identity and who you are. So I think those things coupled kind of make me a weirdo, and that I'll try anything. And I'm like, fear. I don't make many decisions based on fear. And I do see where that can get you put you in a box. So I do think there's probably some of those things. Again, Ryan, bringing it out of me. I don't know that I was ready for this sort of breakthrough today, but
I think I actually, can I share something I just went through? I literally finished it last night at 1:00 in the morning. I got out of a coding boot camp, a 12-week software full stack program. And you have to, when you're finished, you have to put a portfolio together. And for me, that I hate anything that kind of is like bragging about myself and trying to, and anything about that. I don't like it. It's just not my thing. But for this portfolio, I wanted to learn how to do a few different things that I hadn't done before. I wanted to learn how to use Tailwind CSS and combine it with a React app. And I wanted to learn how to deploy it to Linode. And the reason I wanted to do all those things was because it's something I hadn't done before. And it's something I felt I needed to learn, something that, is kind of prevalent right now is Tailwind. And so I figured if I figured that out, that I would, it would be just that much better for a potential job offer kind of thing. And so I start working on this. I've done a React app before in the past. I've done basic stuff with the boot camp, but now I don't have the teachers there. I don't have the instructors to ask a question about. And what should have been a 2-day, 3-day project took a month of trial and error, watching YouTube videos, reading blogs, reading this, reading that, and just, I'm kind of the same way. I'll jump in head first and not realize what I have done until it's too late. And so this turned into like blocker after blocker after blocker after blocker. And then finally last night at 1:00 in the morning, I was able to get it deployed to Linode, get the DNS set up to where the domain works and everything. And that sense of accomplishment of just like, holy cow, I did this was, I was elated. I couldn't even get to sleep last night just because I was like, finally it's done. But I see, Ryan, the fear-based thing, when you start a business and you've touched the coal and your hands burnt and you failed so many times, because I think you and I have both done that a few times. It's really hard to jump back on there and say, hey, I'm going to try this for the 15th time and see what happens this time. And because I relate with you, I've had the same issues. And I think it's just a matter of perseverance. And I think this podcast is a perfect example of that, and what you can accomplish with perseverance and just keep doing it and doing it and doing it. And now we have, almost 260 episodes of good quality interviews, and it just keeps getting better and better. So I think that's pretty much what it comes down to, is just, keep trying, don't be afraid to fail, because it's going to happen. So.
And I like how, those wins create this virtuous cycle for you. Like you're going to be more inclined to try maybe something that's a little further out on the edge, and more convicted that you can actually figure that out. And that's going to keep compounding and compounding over time. Right. And that's it. Just be brave enough to try.
Yeah.
Or dumb enough to try. In that
case. So you kind of, from what I understand with Maestro, you quit your job, and then you're on a plane and you've got 2 fairly large contracts within a week. And now it's like, now what? Like, now I got to make this happen. Yeah. That's fairly early success in the process, and you have the funding to make it happen. Do you think if you didn't land those contracts, Maestro would have been as successful and you'd be where you're at today?
Well, I don't look like a sales guy or sound like a sales guy probably, but I'm pretty dang good at sales. So I would have landed some contracts. I was pretty convinced of that. And my wife was, like, to a fault. She just knew, and she knew, like, we're taking mild career risk. I quit my job at Stryker the week we moved into our dream house on the lake, wow. Which is with a nightmare mortgage.
Yeah.
But we dreamed of living on a lake the whole life, and that was already in play, and we'd built the house. But entrepreneurship for me was just something that she could just see. I was going to just spontaneously combust at some moment. It was just going to happen. It was inevitable. It was just a question of when and on what idea. And so this one was controlled enough that, she believed in me, and I believed in myself enough to go out there and try. So yeah, if eventually nothing came through, you're right, it wouldn't happen. But if it wasn't Abbott or Tournier, it would have been Medtronic or J&J or one of these other ones that, I had some connections or relationships at, which we eventually made. But yeah, it certainly helped the confidence factor, like, whoa, I've got money coming in. And by the way, that wasn't like easy money. I make it sound like easy money. Those projects were like, do it wrong, then do it a little less wrong, then do it a little less wrong, and then eventually do it right. Those are not very profitable projects in the beginning. We made a lot of bad mistakes. And so may have been 100K the first week, but it was still like just shy of $1 million the first year in sales. So the next projects came a little bit easier. And so we weren't profitable right out of the gate, but we figured it out over time.
Have you were you able to spin that into the next one and the next one financially wise, or did you ever go out and raise funding for a project?
Yeah. So interesting deal and opportunity. My co-founder in Maestro, she was, kind of came from the same background as I did, and sales background as well. And so the idea for Bloomfire came. I seemed to be the right one to kind of run after that. And we were making, a decent amount of profit each month on Maestro. So I could either buy myself a new boat each month, or I could take that money and go build a piece of software. So we did take our own money. So we basically just, the deal was, hey, Jen, you run Maestro, I'll build Bloomfire, and we'll copy and paste cap tables from one company to the other, keep the profits going at Maestro, and we'll put those into Bloomfire, and we'll just see which one can run further and faster, and kind of split our bet in a way. And it worked. And, in 18 months after we got to market, Bloomfire was acquired. And in the process, I had moved to Utah for the reasons I mentioned before. And then I didn't know what to do. Like, okay, do I come back to Maestro? Am I your boss now? Or am I in the sales team? Like, what? And she had been running it for a couple of years, and she was like, no, I've kind of made this company mine, and, let me just buy you out. And so we worked an earn out deal, and she bought me out over the next 5 years. And so there I was in the desert, millions in the bank, and not sure what to do with my life. So what do you do when you're an irresponsible kid that grew up in rural Michigan? You blow money on cars and off-road vehicles and make irresponsible decisions. Yeah.
Now you just need to film it and start a YouTube channel.
Well, I actually did that.
Speaking of that. That's funny.
Yeah. No, so one thing I wanted to talk to you about, and it's, and we can talk a little bit about the process with Volley here pretty soon, because I would like to talk about that.
Yeah.
But one of the things, so I have this theory that we're reaching kind of a technological saturation point where people are starting to go back and look for real life, tangible things, experiences, foods, whatever, right? So this is the rise of the foodie movement and beard oil and all this kind of stuff, right? These are seeking out experience in a world of, touching iPhone screens all day. And so, but you happen to have a generations old lineage of pickling in your background. And I wondered, also as a car guy, as a pickle guy who also happens to be working in tech. If you could talk a little bit about that dichotomy, how it exists in you, this desire for real life tangible outside of just simply tech.
Sure. Yeah, it's a great great outlet. My life's mission is to make beautiful things, and I can do that by building a cool 4x4 or a jar of pickles or a musical performance. But a tech company is really the thing that taxes me the most as a creative. And yeah, I used to make pickles with my dad when I lived back in Michigan, and therefore I kind of had a constant supply of pickles. And when I moved to Utah, that was like one of the, oh no, I don't have pickles. Oh no, I didn't even think about that. How do I get pickles? How do I make my own here? So then had to figure out how to get a decent supply of pickles late in the season and make jars of pickles. And so I made a bunch and gave them to friends, and they tore those things up. And I was like, oh, you like these too? Okay. And then next year it was like, I gave them to friends who had friends who wanted them because they tried them. And then it was friends of friends of friends. And then it became like a multi-$1,000 a year proposition to like make pickles for my friends and their friends. And it was, took a lot of time. And so I started selling them, and then I would sell out. And I was like, so then I started making more. And then, so when it came to like 2018, when I started thinking, it's time to get back up to the plate, crank one over the fence. I struck out once, I hit a double, I hit a single. Let's crank one over the fence. What ideas are on that rubric? And so pickles was just one of those, because I've never seen a group of people so fanatical about a product as these pickles. And they're from my family's recipes. My family didn't have money. They had great pickle recipes. And I have a pickle recipe book that sits in my safe that was handwritten by my great grandfather, but that he learned from his father-in-law. So, and that I make those recipes, and they're terrific. So I thought, let's make a pickle company. That's what we should do. Let's do a craft company. That's cool. I've got a beard, and we can get more beard oil, and we'll get jars. So I turned my shop into a pickle lab and hired a pickle scientist. And the goal was to build a company using my family's recipes. And I did. So I spent like 3 months doing that, figured out all the ingredients, how to make things at scale, suppliers, et cetera, put a P&L together. And if you've ever seen the P&L for a SaaS company, for a software company, and then look at the P&L for a pickle company, you're going to have a really hard time getting excited, because there's this line called COGS that's really big. And there's a line at the bottom that's like margin that's really, really small. And so you can't just sell like a couple hundred jars or a couple thousand jars of pickles. You've got to sell like millions of jars of pickles. And this is why the pickle companies out there, for the most part, have been around for 80 years, and they can sell pickles for like $3 a jar, and they're pretty good, not great. And so I just saw, whoa, this is going to be a really grindy, capital intensive business. And I have to want to put pickles in jars for the next 30 years of my life. And it's fun, but not that fun. So yeah, we got back to the rubric. Okay, what else isn't as grindy? And I actually came back to the pickle idea for a second round in my like 2-year journey of trying to validate different ideas. Cause I thought, well, what if I can make my family's recipe shelf stable? If so, then I could do direct consumer pickle company. I know tech, we could do e-commerce. Oh, this will be great. And then I spent 3 months again with that same pickle scientist, and turns out it's scientifically impossible to do what I wanted to do in a safe way, according to the FDA, because I have to sell out in some sort of way. And eventually my family's recipe ends up tasting pretty much like a Vlasic. And that's not something to get excited about either. So I didn't want to sell out, didn't want a grindy business. So what's next?
Yeah. No, I love that. I think it's a fun story, and it feels a little out of left field when you're talking to a guy who runs tech companies, right? So I wanted to just kind of dig into that a little bit. I think it sounded like a fun topic.
So your one sheet, the form that they send over for you as a guest, they had a question on there that kind of stood out to me a little bit that I wanted to ask you about. And just the suggested question on the one sheet was, what is asynchronous communication and why are the top companies in the world doing that? The reason I ask is because I have no clue and I'm curious. So if you could define that for me, I would appreciate it.
Well, yeah, let's define it. And, that's why I kind of nodded to this in the beginning of the episode is we've kind of moved on from that use case with Volley just because we've got a starving crowd and of these creators and coaches, and they need something to be face-to-face and flexible with their community. But it's all the same idea. Asynchronous just means not at the same time. Synchronous is what we're doing right now. We're talking to each other at the same time. When you talk in real time, I hear you talk. I'm listening to you while you talk. You're listening to me while I talk. That's synchronous. Asynchronous is like texting. I send you a text message. You're not reading the text as I type it. You read it, well, according to data, 6 seconds later, at least 90% of your text 6 seconds later, or sometime later, and then you text me back sometimes later, and I read that sometimes. That's asynchronous. So think asynchronous texting. And so the history of communication is really been put in, you can put easily into 2 buckets. Pretty much all written communication is asynchronous. Text, chat, email, that's asynchronous. Slack, asynchronous. Discord, asynchronous. Well, there are synchronous components because you can do a video call in those platforms like Zoom. That's synchronous. And so talking is synchronous. That's something we do at the same time. And so the history of communication, you've either had those options. You're either sitting around a campfire in a cave, or you're writing on the cave wall for someone to walk up and see later. And so the idea of Volley is, what if we took the best of both worlds? Because asynchronous, when you choose to write, you're choosing to do something you're 7 times slower at than speaking. We have this gift for speaking. And not only are we faster, but there's a whole 93% of the communication picture is delivered through tone of voice and body language. Yeah. So we have this gift of like communicating and sharing our message fast and with full context, this thing that's talking, but that's interruptive. That's the problem with talking is we got to stop what we're doing. We got to put something on the calendar. We got to work 3 months ahead and figure out when we can fit you in. Right. And then, when it comes to synchronous behavior, there's people who talk too much, people who talk too slow, people who don't let others talk. Meetings just kind of fill whatever time box that you give them. Magically, this conversation will take 60 minutes. Why? Is that really what we needed? No, that's just what we gave it. And so there's a lot of downsides to either. The idea of Volley is, what if we put the best together? What if we could take the richness of talking and combine that with the flexibility of texting? And that's the idea of video messaging. And that's asynchronous. So I send you a video message in 10 seconds, 10 minutes, or 10 hours later, you view that message, hit record, and send one back, just like texting. So it's like, and this isn't a thing, but this kind of breaks the idea loose for some people. Is like, what if it's like video texting, and like, what would that be like? Imagine video texting. Oh, that would be kind of cool. Cause yeah, you could just say what you need to say and move on with your day. And you could kind of bounce video chat back all day. And wouldn't that be great for teams? Because like the top 3 problems with remote teams are lack of communication, loneliness, and meeting fatigue. And wouldn't this just solve all 3 of them? Yes, it absolutely would. And that's why we started building it. And, at the height of the pandemic. So that's asynchronous communication. Some of the top companies in the world, GitLab, Automatic, Google, like they're all kind of embracing this asynchronous mindset, and they're realizing if we're going to try to solve this remote thing, that either looks like Zoom doom or Slack crack, and neither are exciting. How do we solve this problem? Volley, we hoped, was an answer, but like I said, we've got a crowd that's tearing it up more than teams. We've had thousands of teams adopt Volley, which is great, but our creators are just showing us what good looks like. And so that's the market we're focused on right now, is helping creators monetize their knowledge, their expertise, their inner circle, and build like a membership community or mastermind, or do their group coaching or alongside their courses. And that's just like super reproducible. The team thing, not so reproducible. Unfortunately, people at work still in 2022 are interested in hiding more than they are in communicating.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. Right before the COVID pandemic, unbeknownst to me, knowing that it wasn't coming, I started a remote work consultancy called Team Made Apart. And so I spent the last 2.5 years or so interviewing all the top guys in remote work. And obviously this asynchronous communication thing has been a big part of that. And, so talking about Slack and some of these other things, but you're right. I mean, one of the big complaints, and it even occurred to me while you were talking or while you were giving that description, is like, yeah, but I don't want to put my face on camera. I would rather just send a text,
Oh man.
And so it's interesting because I think that for a lot of people, that's the gut impulse, right? I'd rather just send the text or the email and set it and forget it. There's something, I guess, to being maybe more accountable for what you say if you do it in a method like Volley. And I think it does a better job of communicating, like you said, the rest, right? The body language, the tone. I'm a notorious sarcastic joker, but I will tell you one thing that does not translate in text, and that is sarcasm. So,
right.
So a process or a tool like Volley for that type of communication, or for the way that I joke, is incredible.
Yeah. I mean, the classic example there is we need to talk. And if you get that in a text, you're like, oh no, or oh yes, or but if I say, dude, we need to talk, like there's no mistaking. You saw in my eyes, I have something cool. And when we talk, it's going to be good. And we should talk soon. Right. And so there is a lot to that indeed. And I can't believe, and things I wish I would have known when we started Volley. I can't believe the percentage of people that are making a video of themselves the first time in their lives. And because all of our users get a conversation with us on the team, and we kind of, all help out our users whenever they have questions. And you can tell when somebody's doing, they don't say, this is the first video I've ever made of myself. They say, it's recording. I don't know if I like looking. Do I have to just look at myself this whole? Oh, I feel like I'm just talking to myself. And they're saying these things like, and I'm like, you've made bunches of videos of someone else, but never a video, even though Snapchat, even though Marco Polo, even though you have never really interesting. And so that's what we've seen in thousands and thousands of teams. There's always one person on the team that is like, they see Volley and they're like, this is the future. This is the way we're going to solve all these problems. And they bring it into the team. And then the team, like a good percentage of the team, marches them out of town because, like I said, they're still interested in hiding. You can hide behind a Slack message. You can sit for 10 minutes and obsess about your bullet point, or get that word right and think about it and say, is that right? Should I send that? Okay, I sent it, right? And or you can leave your camera off on a Zoom meeting. You can take your cheap shot. But when you hit record in Volley, you're on, baby. And if you don't have something to say, you're going to get freaked out. And you're going to think this thing is from the devil. And you're going to tell this person who thought it was the future of communication how they are so wrong and this is evil and whatever. And we saw it team after team after team. And we're like, okay, we're ready. Technology is ready. Unfortunately, the culture of work is not ready yet for most teams. Now, there's still many teams using Volley and it's great. But the reproducibility we found with that use case being so low, we're like, okay, well, we'll come back to you later.
Yeah, well, and I'd like to sort of dig in a little bit on that. I mean, the way you've discussed it here, it's pretty flippant, this idea that, oh, well, our use case just changed, so now we're chasing that. I'm thinking of the Gallimimus in Jurassic Park, just switching with the winds, but I think that first of all takes a little bit of courage and is maybe a bigger decision than a lot of people would think, right? I mean, I think a lot of people get sort of married to their ideas and they launch a brand or a product or a service or whatever, and they believe it's supposed to be X. So we're going to chase down X, come hell or high water. But the way you're discussing this pivot or this adaptation, I wonder if you'd talk a little bit about the decision-making process
Sure.
that goes through that.
Yeah. Well, luckily I've been like swat right upside the head with one of these in the past. So I'm kind of looking for it now, or just, making sure I'm not broadsided. So Qzzr, we built a quiz tool for teachers and trainers. Like Qzzr, the early days of Qzzr had like LMS like functionality in it. And I was like pitching it to all my e-learning friends and they kind of gave it blank stares. And they were like, well, what levels of Kirkpatrick's valuation system does this satisfy? And I was like, no, you don't get it. It's the world's simplest quiz tool. Make a quiz embedded in your website. That's it. And KSL did that. They picked up a quiz, made a quiz. I forgot what the first one was about, but something about travel in Utah, embedded it in their site, and boom. And then they called me the next day. They're like, dude, do you know what you have? We got double the traffic on this quiz than any of our top articles of the day. This was nuts. We're going to start running these every day. So then other local publishers started to do that because everyone kind of watches KSL. They're kind of a top tier local pub. And then, so they started embedding quizzes in their website, and then national pubs. And then pretty soon we got Gawker and ESPN and Time and Today Show. And we're like, holy crap. And that's why like we went to hundreds of millions in months. And it was a crazy, crazy ride. So this is where I built it for teachers, but publishers had a different idea. And there's no way I'm going to say, no, publishers, that's stupid. I'm going to keep talking to these people about their Kirkpatrick's valuation system or whatever it is they're talking about, right?
I mean, and it makes sense on a logical level, right? I mean, if client A isn't buying your product, but client B is, right? I mean, pivot to client B. But I do think that it's certainly there's an ego component that might keep somebody from doing that. And it seems that you've come to grips with that part.
Well, sure. And I think it's really hard to know when you're there because, and Mark Andreessen, I'm going to murder his quote, but like I murdered whoever said that quote earlier. But it's like product market fit, you know when it's happening. It's unmistakable. Things are flying off the shelf. You can't keep up. Your servers are crashing. That was happening at Qzzr, right? Like you have it, just go. But you're not, when it's not happening, you kind of aren't sure. And you're asking like, is it happening? And the sales feel a little soft and users aren't using the product like you hoped or intended and these sorts of things. And that doesn't, there's rarely a case when like no one will use your product. No one will buy your product. That's very, very, very rare, right? Usually you can like twist someone's arm into buying or using a product and then they kind of use it. But that's that stuck in the middle place that's really hard to know when you're there. And it's hard to know, like, is this really working? And we were kind of there with teams. It's like, yeah, we've got thousands of teams. Look at these logos. These are, Apple and Facebook. Oh my gosh, somebody from Amazon's you. Oh my gosh, look at this. And so it's easy to like get caught in vanity metrics. Look how many users and but that doesn't matter. You've got to dig deeper and look at like really how are they using it. And the unfortunate thing, we kept seeing the Volley team, our team of 11 people, be the top team every week, like in terms of engagement. We're like, that shouldn't happen. That shouldn't happen. Somebody should be able to outrun us. And, months after months of this data and also realizing you also need to do a certain amount for yourself to like check the box that we did our best, because on paper, teams should be tripping over themselves to use Volley. Absolutely. They should cancel their Slack subscription, download Volley today. Every team in the world should be doing that. That's working remote. I believe it. And I believe someday they will come to that realization. But we had to build enough to even to ourselves say, hey, we tried. Like teams aren't going to adapt it if we don't have spaces or channels or moderation or admin or transcripts. So we had to like build these things. And we're like, wait till we get transcripts, man. That's going to be the thing. We launch transcripts and it's kind of like, dang, same thing, like same results over and over, all these different cohorts. And right around that time, we had some other people that did get to the top of our list, and they're not using it for the teams. They're using it for communities. And these are like people doing baseball swing coaching and Catholic scholars. And I'm like, who are these people? And like, oh, communities. And then YouTubers are coming in doing their courses on it. I'm like, okay. Yes, you get it.
Can you break down some functionality for the actual app? Because I haven't downloaded it. I haven't used it, so I don't have anything to base it off of. But initially my thought is I record a message, I send it to my teammate and say, this is what I need you to work on. Do you have any questions? Back and forth. This is what it is. Can you actually like produce a lesson, have it ready and then save it for later? Can you screen share? How does the whole process work?
Sure. Yeah. So Volley is a messaging app at its heart. It's just a video first messaging app. So you go into most messaging or chat apps like Signal or Telegram, you see a text box at the bottom, and that's what it looks like you should do. So you write a little text message. But in Volley, you go in and there's a camera facing you and there's a record button. And yeah, there's a little text icon right below that. but 60% of Volley sent are video volleys. So that's why people adopt Volley, is because of the video messaging component. So Volley is very much something like Snapchat or Marco Polo had a baby with something like Discord. So it has the organization and the ability to create a space and create channels as something like Discord, but then underneath it, instead of it being a text message back and forth, it's a video messaging platform. So this is why creators, especially YouTubers, are loving it, because video is just second nature. And of course, this is a way you're going to communicate. And I'm 7 times faster, and my audience loves it. And it feels like an outsized value exchange for them. And so it's a way to be face to face like we are now, but flexible. No calendars involved. You can catch up with the conversation whenever you want to, and you can chime in whenever you want to. So
can you have like one-on-one instruction with the teacher, and then is there a paywall kind of incorporated in it if you're having a subscription base, or do you need to do that through Patreon? My brain's going a million miles a minute right now, because I actually have friends that teach DJ lessons. Yeah. And this to me would be very easy for them to say, hey, you need to do this and change this. And I've seen like 8-page long text messages that this guy who's Rob Swift, we've had him on the podcast in the past. He's teaching these students, and he's sharing these messages on Instagram. And I'm like going, man, your app would solve that 100%, because he could be like, here's a physical example of me doing it. This is what you need to change. And so I think that'd be really cool to maybe implement the Patreon functionality into it as well, and have that paywall. I think it'd be
and implement the affiliate link so we can get Rob Swift signed up with you guys. So as we're creeping up on the end of the time, I'd like to just sort of give you the opportunity to let people know where they can learn more about you, learn more about the app, maybe engage with you if they felt so inclined.
Yeah, you bet. I mean, the best way is to download Volley, and you don't have a way to escape me. I'm all over in every community. You can just message me there. So volleyapp.com, just go check out Volley and volley me. That's the best way right now.
Excellent. Well, that's great. Well, Josh, thanks so much for doing this. I mean, I'm grateful that we were able to connect. Maybe next time we'll have to do it in person, but really grateful to be able to pick your brain for a minute. And I appreciate you humoring us on sort of a, psychological level, that was a little maybe less tactical than you might have had in mind.
It was great. Yeah. I think some progress was made here today on my side. I don't know, maybe your side, some therapy was exchanged. I appreciate it.
Well, and Lord willing, that'll be useful for somebody out there listening to this. So thanks so much, Josh. Really appreciate you. So cool. And thanks so much to everybody who listens to the show this week and every week. And see everybody next time.